What's up, folks? MC here. I'm actually heading from my property, going over to visit the brothers. Gonna do some shooting, some training today. I was letting you guys know because that sounds fucking cool, because I fucking love America and this is what Americans do. And I wanted to make a video. That phrase, I wanted to make a video, it's so fucking overused. I gotta think of something else. But anyway, here I am. I've pressed record and you're listening to me. I want to talk about that lady, woman, lady's debatable, that was just convicted of involuntary manslaughter. I believe that was the charge, over her role in getting that weak fucking piece of velvet to kill himself. Now, there's there's two major points to this that I think, everybody's emotions and everybody's motivation to be right and to protect all of their own insecurities, and I understand, you have to concede, there's something good about us that I believe there's something good about us that when we see a member of the tribe, we want to help them. And historically, I would say that, women, children, and retards. And this guy probably, I think, falls into the retard category for a lot of people. So you see this just intense, reactionary type thinking whereby they want to lash out. And they want this girl on the in the hanging from the gallows. So the two things that we got to argue here are, number one, can a person kill another person with their words, or is there always going to be a decision to be made by the person who eventually kills himself? And exactly how much power or force does the person who is throwing words or text messages towards somebody, exactly how much power does that contain? I would argue it only contains the power that you give it. I think that is yet another decision that the individual makes prior to killing themselves. But I don't think anybody that is completely against this girl getting convicted of this is going to argue the merits of her character. And that's where I think a lot of people become deluded, distracted. They're completely just off track. The woman is a complete piece of shit. I think that's just blatantly obvious. She is a piece of shit. By the way, it is not illegal to be a piece of shit. And you cannot argue the validity of this government-sanctioned conviction and punishment that will be carried out henceforth. You cannot argue that should be the penalty in a free country for being a piece of shit. This girl will be ostracized. She'll be labeled. She'll get the fucking scarlet letter, right? She'll be walking around a pariah for a long time. And the only way she will not be able to do that, or not be forced to do that, is if she goes somewhere, obviously, where nobody knows her, and she stops being a piece of shit. Problem solved. So now we have the individual, the young man. I don't remember his name, and I think it's worth noting, and, I got feels too, right? So I'm going to say, I don't know the guy, and I can only imagine what it's like for a family. I can only imagine how emotional it makes a family to have, your son go through this. I have 3 sons. I get it. I cannot say I would react the same way, but, I'm a different kind of animal. So we look at this young man. The young man had battles with depression, right? So one could say, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, the kid was fragile, right? He was probably a, to some extent a big piece of pussy. Doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with his surroundings. And as much as I could check, I didn't find any information to indicate that he was poverty-stricken, that he was, made an invalid and lost all the capabilities of who his identity was. There wasn't any great trauma, and that's debatable, right? That's a subjective observation, but by my standards, there wasn't anything near a trauma that we would say, okay, this is the cause, this is the effect. The kid was just working some shit out and not doing a very good job of it. Was not surrounded by an environment that incentivized him becoming stronger, that incentivized him becoming more self-reliant, that incentivized him taking accountability for his own actions. So when I look at this kid, to say, oh, he's been battling depression, well, what the fuck does that mean? When did we start adding the value to that? I was just having a conversation last night with a couple of brothers, and we were talking about PTSD, and I said, if I and this is the scenario I used last night. I said, if I applied for a job as a Chinese interpreter, and the people that hired me, let's say, were a bunch of business people going to China, and do you speak Chinese? Yes. Do you have a resume? Yeah, a resume. Negotiate a price. All right, we're going to pay you this. Is that good? Yeah, that's good. And they take me, we all go to China, and when we get there, I realize that, or they realize, I already know, they realize that I don't speak fucking Chinese. So, how would I be thought of at that point? Like, how would they label me? How would I be treated? I think it's obvious I would be a fraud, right? They would be upset. They would reject me from their group. They may pursue some sort of penalty or consequence for how I misrepresented myself. I think if I was somebody who was deluded and thought he could speak Chinese, I think maybe some of the malice is taken off the top, but they're still going to treat me as a fraud. They're still going to sort of downgrade my status, how they look at me, right? I'm no longer trustworthy. I'm no longer reliable. But it's at no point is somebody going to go, oh my God, you okay? Can we help you? You've committed to do this thing. You've misrepresented yourself, and you've been exposed as being a fraud. But obviously that means you need our help. So can we invest any more resources to squaring you the fuck away? I don't think anybody would have that reaction. But for some reason, in general, when we have people who want to sort of move away from the minimum expectations of being a man, of being a woman, of being an adult, of being a citizen, whatever the expectations we have of our neighbors, when somebody refuses to do that minimal amount, somehow we want to give them the same compassion that we give those who have no choice in the matter. Right? So children are vulnerable. Children are vulnerable. If the children in my tribe, I will do for them. I won't expect them to handle themselves, at a minimum, adult level, right? Citizens level, right? We could say. Women, there are certain situations where, obviously the physical realm, where I am going to extend my assistance to a woman, because the nature of our capabilities, where that is concerned, is skewed, right? I am more adept at physically manipulating our surroundings than a woman is. So I will gladly help the woman open the jar, carry the box, no pun intended, etc., etc. Retards are fucking retards. And don't get offended because I use the term retard, right? Because, I mean, they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so it's all you. Like, get over it. They, by definition, are in a state where they cannot process what it is that they would need to process quickly enough, hence the term retarded, to become functional. They can't do it. And we know that. It's the nature of who they are. So our expectations are very much set appropriately with these individuals. But for some reason, when an able-bodied young man is demonstrating the symptoms of being retarded, or being a child, or having some sort of condition that would recruit that altruistic sort of charity in who we are, for some reason they're not held to any objective standard, through expectation. So just because a kid starts acting depressed, why do we act like he has done something, or something has happened to him that is any more significant than him just making a decision to not fulfill his expectations, to not fulfill his requirements, his standards? What we want our citizens to be, how come we don't treat it as somebody who is just refusing to do that? So you have people, I was talking to a buddy of mine last night, and he said that in California, there was a movement at one point. He said that it failed. And I don't know the backstory of this, but he was describing it, where they were trying to make it illegal to discriminate when hiring people based on ability. You cannot, as an employer, discriminate in your hiring process based on somebody's ability to do the job you're hiring them for. Now, we haven't reached yet the point where something like that passes, but that's the direction we're headed. And I would argue that treating a young man who could not socially, find a way to succeed, or surrounded by weakness, was not sort of addressed early on when he was developing these maladjusted coping mechanisms, right, or lack thereof. I would argue that when somebody like that is convinced by somebody else to end his life, it is the same type of thinking that has ruined this country, that has ruined the family, that has ruined the standards. We do not have the feedback loop of reality present in our lives anymore. We will, right? The ball will eventually bounce. But when we convict, we allow the state to convict and carry out a punishment for manslaughter based on communication. How is it that we're okay with that and we do not see or are not outraged by the clear, obvious contradiction with our basic Bill of Rights? Free speech is allowed unless somebody decides to take your speech and kill themselves. Then you are a murderer. That's the logic of this situation. Stop arguing the lack of character in the young lady. Obviously, she's a fucking piece of shit. But at no point can we allow ourselves as a society that wishes to succeed, to thrive, at no point can we allow ourselves to get to the point where we tell people, he heard something he didn't like, he heard it enough, he heard it loudly enough, that he decided to kill himself. And it's not his fault. Fuck that. Alright, guys. I'm almost at my boy's house. I'm gonna be shooting some guns in a little while. Pretty fired up. You guys know the deal. The Pressure Projects, the website, the Warrior Projects, the membership site. You're watching this on one of my channels, so you know what I'm talking about. But you're awesome. Talk to you later. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to motherfucking power. Bam.